Hey everyone, my name is Eric Jones, better known as the Turf Teacher, and welcome to the course entitled Introduction to Accounting. Now, this is basically, it is a simple introduction, but I want to start off the course by talking about my accountant. He's in his 80s. He did, kind of surrender his CPA license. He didn't want to kind of keep up with all the continuing education. He's semi-retired. Like a lot of you guys in the landscape industry and irrigation side of the house are thinking about retiring. He still wanted to be a part of it. He turned in his CPA license and actually went to work for another CPA, but he still does our bookkeeping for us and actually helps us get ready for tax season. I love him to death. And one of the best quotes he's ever told me, he said, "Eric, people surprise me and then they don't." And so, good advice from a gentleman that I do highly respect and admire with all of my heart. Great guy. And if you ever hear me say, when somebody asks me, "Hey, is it a good day?" I say, absolutely. I woke up on top of the grass. Another famous quote from my accountant. But like I said, he did retire. He is now working, part-time for another CPA, which I like and admire just as much as him. And thank goodness that this guy does have a son that's coming on, because there's two people that I say you don't want to outlive other than our family members, correct? None of us want to outlive our family members, but you don't want to outlive your accountant or your attorney, especially when it comes to your business, because you get to know them on that personal level, and you sure do. So this is a basic introduction to accounting. I know some of the other courses we talk about maybe a little more in depth, but I do like talking about this class, and it is good for one business credit. So we're going to look at our objectives next, and we're going to talk about the purpose of accounting. Why do we have that? Why do we have that? All of us that are in the green industry, we know the green industry. We know turf grass. We know landscaping. We know landscape design. We know irrigation. We know agriculture. We know farming. We know pesticides. We know all of that technical side, but a lot of us tend not to either want to do the bookkeeping or the accounting of our business, or we kind of sub it out to somebody else. So this is a course, a lecture put together to kind of help us understand the basic purpose of why we need an accounting system or accounting in general. We will describe that accounting process. Now, for larger companies, it may be totally different than the single owner operator running a green industry business. It's going to be a big difference in how things run for you on the accounting side and the back office side versus a one employee firm or a 350 people firm. A lot of this is going to be different, and based on the volume that you're doing, you may have to incorporate some different processes. But we will define GAAP, and we will see what that acronym stands for here in the next couple slides. Our retired Army, we had a book full of acronyms we'd have to look up. But we will define GAAP and describe the processes used by the FASB to develop these principles. Again, another acronym that we will see here in just a second, but we will refer to them as the GAAP and FASB for the slides following the definition of those. We will define three types of business ownership structures, ones that are particularly used in the green industry. Most people, start off as that sole proprietor. Nothing wrong with that. Really, it's nothing wrong with that. But as your business grows, and the more clients that you get, and some of your larger contracts that you may want you to have a corporation, an LLC, Sometimes people even form partnerships. Two sole proprietors kind of merge together and do that. And we're going to talk about those on their respective slides as we progress through the slide deck. We will classify different types of business activities. What it is that you're doing, whether you're a service-based industry, whether you are producing goods such as a nursery or a greenhouse production facility. And then what if you're a manufacturer? You are producing products like pavers, concrete, things that would be used in a landscape job. And then we will identify some landscape responsibilities in accounting, what type of people that you may bring on board to help you with this. Now, my accountant, I've told you some good things about him. He also said years ago, I remember him telling my mother and my father, who started this business, our landscape business. So not only do we run Turf Teacher Inc., we also run a full service landscape contracting business ourselves. But our accountant was, back in the day with my parents, and they started in 1977. And so, the accountant that we use now and the one I still, have for bookkeeping helped my parents in their later years in the business. So, but a great guy nonetheless. Talked about the first person, Eric, that you need to hire is somebody in that office. And at first I kind of, scratched my head on that. I'm like, well, I need individuals in the field. I need technicians. I need horticulturalists. We have these jobs, but he's 100% right. After only running this business for, several years after mom and dad, stepped away. And, most of you know, my father passed away in September of 23. And mom, stepped away as well from the business. And I took over the landscape side of the house. My brother kind of took over farm operations with, the strawberry fields and whatnot. But that person in the office is 100% key. But it has to be an individual that you can trust with all of your might. It doesn't need to be somebody that is a little bit shady. And how do we know that they're shady? We really don't, guys, until we interview them multiple times. We get to learn them. Even after we hire them, we're going to start learning that personality because it all comes out. It all comes out. But I've hired an individual that has let me down big time. Was hired to do a lot of paperwork, run jobber for us, do the invoicing, do the estimating, and it didn't work out. And so that is a process, finding that person. But I still to this day, now agree with my accountant that first person that you need to hire should be the person in the back office, an office manager. And that's typically in the green industry or any service industry when we're starting out, is going to be our spouse more than likely. But we'll talk about the positions there towards the end of the slides. So the purpose of accounting is to provide financial information about current operations and financial conditions of a business to individuals, agencies, and organizations. And we have a slide. The next slide's got like a chart on it that'll actually help us understand this a little bit. But remember, we're providing financial information about the current operations of a business. So I'm sure you've all heard of, chart of accounts, P&L statements, all of these forms that you can produce, pretty quickly in your accounting system. Or if you're using, I run things a little different. I'm gonna be honest with you. And because my accountant told me, he said, I would prefer that you not do QuickBooks. He said, I like Jobber. He said, that's fine. How you're invoicing, how you're estimating, how you're keeping track of your jobs. And then he said, I need those. But he said, what I'm mainly concerned about, Eric, is all of your statements, bank statements and everything, copies of your checks. So we got a pretty simple process. And like I said, it works different for everybody. When my accountant says, hey, I'm done 100%, don't want to do your books or whatever, I may have to change that up a little bit. But again, always open to change, but I like how we do things right now. But we get this current information about it. That way we can take to banks to see if we need a loan. Also, renewing our license, our bonds. Sometimes we have to know this financial information. The bond company for our license guys needs to know our financial status. And we also carry a general contractor's license in our landscape business. Elite Landscape Contractors is also licensed general contractors. And so we do have to produce those financial documents to renew that license each year, as well as get the continuing education for that, just like if we're a landscape contractor, irrigation contractor, pesticide applicator, landscape architect, we have to do that as well. But giving it to individuals, agencies, organizations, sometimes if you're working for another builder, if you're working for a large builder, you may have to prove to them that you are financially responsible enough to take on this job. Some of these landscape jobs, guys, that we see come across the table, are six-figure landscape jobs. Well, we know how long it takes to get paid from builders, don't we? We can wait sometimes 30, 60, even 90 days to get paid. And if that is the case, guess what? We're kind of stuck. We're going to have to cover the cost of that job, and we need to be able to have this glance of our business. Can we financially do that? Because the profits, working for commercial builders, it is profitable. I think the money is not as good with the home builders, but if you work for a large developer or a large general contractor that's doing major projects and, has the landscape architect do the specs, there is good money in that. You just got to be financially stable to support that job until you get draws, until you get that final payment and even that retainage that's going to be held. The way you can figure out if you're capable enough of doing this is knowing your financial information at any given point. And so, who are the users of this accounting information that we have? All right. So here in this table, we have user, information needed, and the decision by the users that may take this information. So we have the owners, present and future. A lot of green industry companies are family-based businesses. So we pretty much know who the future of our business is. It's hopefully our children, right? If not, it's going to be our employees. We may do an employee buyout for us at retirement. But the owners, present and future, they need to know the company's profitability and current financial condition. Now, I know this is hard sometimes, guys. I am living proof of it. We work in the field. That's the difference between me and a lot of other business owners. I'm right there in the trenches, just like you guys taking my classes. I work with my guys side by side on a daily basis. When I come home in the evenings, it's hard sometimes to do estimates. Definitely hard to do invoices. You're tired, you're wore out, you just want to chill for a little bit. But we've got to do this, and we've got to make time to know our current financial situation or the condition that our company is. If business is good, owners may consider making additional investments for growth. If the business is poor, they may want to talk to management to find out why and may consider closing the business. You can't run on negative cash flow. Which another smart little saying from my accountant is always said, hey, Eric, you can run on negative cash flow for 2 years, but at the end of 2 years, it will come crashing down on you. And that's true. That is 100% true. Managers may or may not own the business, but if you're growing your business and you're hiring account managers, and some of their pay is based on commission or percentages of work performed, they're going to want to know detailed measures of the business performance. Why is it taking their guys? Why are they spending more labor this year than they did last year on certain jobs? So that is their job, is to actually track all of this and know what's going on. They need to make operating decisions. How much and what kind of inventory should they carry? Let's say you're running a lawn care division and you have account manager over that. Well, to me, lawn care is probably one of the simplest business plans to put together. If you know your square footage of turf that you're taking care of, you know how much product you're going to need for each application. And when should we purchase this? When should we store it? Should we buy, weekly? Should we buy monthly our products like that? Again, depends on the size of the information. But is the business strong enough to support higher wages for employees? Today, what we're seeing with employees is that money's not the object. It's not. However, that employee wants to make more than they've ever made in the green industry. It's because they don't want to work the full 40. They want the same pay as working 40 hours, but they want to make a high enough wage, an hourly rate, that they can take 1 or 2 days off. And that's no joke. Guys, I have guys that, want to be here 5 days a week and want to work overtime on the weekends. And then I have individuals that only want to work just enough, but they need that higher wage because they're going to take 1 or 2 days off, by choice. But I don't hear from them. They just do it every single week. And we say, why are we putting up with that? It's because we have work and we have customers that we want to take care of. Creditors, your present creditors and future creditors. Again, maybe we want to borrow some money, but the information needed is company's profitability. What is the debt outstanding? I've taken on a lot of debt. Dad passing away, mom kind of backing away from the business. They kind of were operating with some outdated stuff. So we had to replace some trucks, had to replace skid steers, mowers. So I took on quite a bit of debt when I started running this business. We're making the payments, yes, but guess what? That can all be pulled out, from any type of election. We don't know what's going to happen. And it can get a little scary. Again, that's why you need to know where you're at, what jobs are sold, what's coming in, and how much debt that you can stand. What about assets that could be used to secure the debt? We have the farm here. When we purchase our strawberries to plant, the land is secure for that because we don't want to come up with, taking operating cash from the farm or the landscape business to actually buy the berries. And so it is a loan that's paid off each year. And so these decisions that we can make from this information, should a loan be granted to our business? If so, what amount of debt can the business support and what interest rate should be charged? And again, that all goes back to credit reports. What is your debt to income ratio? All of that will affect what interest rate that you are getting. And then not last, not least, our favorite people on this chart is our government agencies, right? Our national, state, and local. That's our tax collectors, right? That's a bad word, right? It's a bad word in the Bible too, right? But companies' profitability, cash flows, and overall financial condition. The IRS can shut you down if you are not making a profit. They'll just be like, you're done. But the IRS, or Internal Revenue Service, enforces U.S. tax laws to determine how much income tax the business must pay. Local governments may be willing to adjust property taxes paid by the business to encourage it to stay in town. That is a good thing right there. Local governments may be willing to adjust property taxes paid by the business to encourage it to stay in town. Wow. Probably not going to happen with a green industry business, but I could see it happening for some other things. And, you know, property tax helps bring in, you know, not having a property tax helps like big manufacturing come into, you know, a not so rich rural area. You know, the larger manufacturer may come in and build a manufacturing plant in an area that people need jobs. And so the local government would, you know, kind of waive or reduce that property tax to actually have them to set up shop there. So these are the users of accounting information from our landscape or irrigation business. The accounting process. Accounting is a system of gathering financial information about a business and reporting this information to the users that we just talked about. So we gather that information. Now, how you guys keep track of it, again, is going to be based on the accountant that you're using or your bookkeeper. I know landscape contractors that have CPAs on staff. I know electrical companies that have lawyers on staff to help write the contracts. And they also do their payroll. So some people are big enough that they have to have these people in place. I don't know if I'd ever want to get that big that my accountant is on staff or my attorney is on staff. But one way to look at that, you were pulling in some cash to actually pay their payroll, to pay their hourly rate. And we even talked about that in a couple of the webinars that we do on Tuesday and Thursday evenings about these type of management positions in your company. But I know them personally. I know companies that have lawyers on staff and CPAs on staff to help them run their business. You're doing okay if you can do that. And these individuals that do have these on staff, I know these people take more vacations than a lot of people. Again, it's about delegating authority, having these systems in place. And so what type of accounting system are we talking about? Hey guys, it's as simple as how we collect our receipts. Are we scanning them in and keeping them digitally? Or are we putting them in a shoebox? You know, how are we doing that? Are we attaching these receipts to individual jobs? Are you doing purchase orders for jobs? How many times you go into a supply house and they're like, all right, you got a purchase order number. Most of us are going to say, no, what is a purchase order? But again, it goes back to the size of your operation. So steps of the accounting process. What is it that we're doing? We're analyzing. We're looking at events that may have taken place and thinking about how they affect the business. Now, I kind of look at this analyzing as an operational thing. You've got an account manager who is watching how long it takes crew A to mow these set of apartments. How much time is it taking to do the job? How much Roundup did they use on the job? How many pine needles? And if you're keeping track of this, you're seeing year to year what's happening. Well, what if you see that it's taken more bales of pine straw? You know, it's increased a little bit each year. So what's going on? Are the bales getting smaller? Absolutely, right? So maybe that would help us determine that we may need another vendor for pine straw. What about recording? Entering financial information about events into the accounting system. Now, you know, we use Jobber. You know, have gone back and forth, you know, with LMN a couple times. They're on me pretty thick right now, calling me every day, wanting my business back. But I'm satisfied with Jobber. And it's got places that you can put all of this information in, guys, that you can keep this. Now, does it help me do my accounting? Yeah, it does my estimating. It does my invoicing. I can track the jobs. I can do pretty much everything with it. But like I said, my accountant's more about getting those bank statements to make sure that everything is good to go. Classifying, sorting and grouping similar items together rather than merely keeping a simple diary-like record of numerous events. So with the computer, you can do this. Now, I know people say, Eric, I don't like computers. And I run into this all the time, teaching seminars, especially the face-to-face events. They're like, Eric, we'd much rather come and take your class face-to-face than absolutely trying to figure out how to use a computer. And that's okay, because there are accounting systems. I know a guy that I graduated with, landscaper, who writes everything down in a composition book. And I'm like, dude, hey, what's going on? He said, I get paid as soon as I cut the yard or I do the work. They pay me right then and there. 90% of it's cash, and I just keep a little log book. Works for him because it's just him. Wife has a main job. She's the breadwinner of the house, brings in the insurance as well. He's a stay-at-home dad, right? Cutting grass. It's in the composition book. And he said, Eric, if the IRS ever knocked on my door, that composition book can be thrown in the fireplace. That's how he looks at it. But again, software systems can allow you to group similar items together. But if you're not into that, you need some type of filing system. And, I know some of you might be, laughing, but a lot of the old school guys, aren't using computers. I know landscapers that still, do handwritten invoices. Summarizing. This is the aggregation of many similar events to provide information that is easy to understand. This is a collection of it. You're able to look at that information. We talked about just the number of pine straw, right? Each year it's going up. And think about that. If you're using more needles year to year, what's also happening on that job site? Those shrubs are getting a little bigger. They're not taking up as much bed space. So yes, that bale is getting a little bit smaller. It helps you summarize that and gets you to looking at other vendors for your pine straw. Reporting. It is the telling of the results. And a lot of people will use tables with numbers. Probably one of the most common ways to actually do that. And it leads us to interpretation. Deciding the meaning and importance of this information in various reports. Now, ours is, simple, but I think of some of the larger companies that are out there. I think of other industries that are out there. Home health care. My mom, before she moved into an assisted living facility, she still does use some at-home services. The companies come in and give her physical therapy. They give her occupational therapy. But when she was at the house, living at home, these people were coming by. And you think about somebody that has several LPNs, RNs, occupational therapists, physical therapists, a whole realm of services that they offer, and thinking about how they track everything. And they have to bill insurance. So guess what? Their accounting process is going to be a little more stricter and a little more rigorous than somebody, doing turf grass applications or mowing. And so now we're going to jump into those acronyms that we had just seen. GAAP. These are generally accepted accounting principles. GAAP. These are rules. These are nothing more than rules to follow when preparing financial statements. Now, this is when I would just say, CPA, do it. I give it to now my bookkeeper, who is our CPA, does all of our books and stuff, and then hands it over to the CPA to sign our tax returns. And then he'll do our personal while he's doing the business at the same time. So it just kind of works out. But these principles were developed by the Financial Accounting Standards Board, the FASB. So those are the two acronyms we saw in our objectives. but developed by the Financial Accounting Standards Board, FASB, procedures and guidelines to be followed in the accounting and reporting process. Think about minimum standards to be a landscape contractor. Those are guidelines. Those are procedures on how we are to do things. Accountants have the same. And guys, that's why it's just better to hire this stuff done. We wear many, many hats in the green industry, and accounting is the one that I would not want to wear. I've got to hire that done. Process is used by the FASB to develop the gap. They identify an accounting issue. So there's a problem. They've identified it. They've acknowledged that it exists. They will place this issue on the FASB's agenda. Hey, this is an issue we've found. It has now become part of our agenda to fix it. Then they're going to research that issue. They're going to look into it. Why is it happening? And then issue a preliminary views document to identify pros and cons of treatments. So this is a pretty big board. They are some smart people, and they're getting it put out there. But I like that they're actually printing and issuing documents that will allow other accountants and other tax people and bookkeepers identify the pros and cons of it. Then they can hold public hearings. They'll issue an exposure draft and then consider feedback on that exposure draft. Again, they're seeking other expertise. How many people we know in the green industry that know everything? Been in the business 1 year and you can't tell them nothing because they know it all. Guys, I'm in my 50s. I'm 51 years old. I've been doing this my entire life other than the military service that I gave to this country. I grew up in this business. Mom and Dad used us for free labor all these years in middle school, high school. We couldn't play sports after school. Mom's picking us up in a work truck, taking us to a job site and dropping us off. We didn't even get snacks. Like, it's work, boys. Get at it. And I know my stuff, but these 1 year veterans out there in this green industry know more than I do. Some of them work for me. But then they issue that final accounting standards update, which amends the FASB accounting standards codification and makes it happen. So there you have it, your gap and your FASB. And now for my favorite part of this lecture, 3 types of ownership structures that we can use: sole proprietor, partnership, corporation. LLC needs to be on there, so maybe we should have changed it to the 4 types. But sole proprietor, guys, again, that's you, yourself, and I. That's who it is. Not even your spouse is a part of it. You are the single owner operator. One owner. There can't be 2 people on the papers filed or anything like that. Now, if you open up a bank account, I'm sure your wife can sign checks and stuff like that for you, make the deposits. But remember, it is one owner. And this one owner assumes all risk. That's what scares me the most about this, is the risk. However, one of the benefits of it is the owner makes all of the decisions. You answer to no one, just your customers and yourself. So one owner assumes all risk, makes all decisions. Guys, it scares me though, if I was to go out, have a car wreck, pick up a rock, send that rock through somebody's windshield and cause them injury. Most sole proprietors don't have workers' comp or general liability. Now, if you're taking this class, you do, because you have to have both of those to get bonded in order to get your license. And you wouldn't be watching this lecture if you didn't need a continuing education credit for your license. But sole proprietors take a big, big risk. I know personally of a situation, I don't know the people involved, but I know the situation that a young man working in the factory during the week, putting in his 40, struggling along, gets married, has children, wants a house, says, I can cut grass and make a little extra cash. And he's right. They can. They can. But was mowing on a corner lot in a small rural, when I say rural, meaning a smaller town, downtown, where the homes are. Usually, the people that can afford. If you live in town, got sidewalks and got a boulevard, you're some of the wealthier people in that area. But was mowing on a corner lot, picked up a rock. The rock went through the passenger door window and hit a little girl upside the head with a pretty big rock. I'm not talking like a piece of sand. I'm talking about washed stone, 67. Hit the little girl in the head and has, deemed her, needing assistance for the rest of her life. Well, being the sole proprietor, he did not have the insurance that he needed. They took his house. They took his vehicles. His wife left him. He was left homeless, standing there like, I didn't mean to do this. And he's right. He didn't mean to do this. I feel sorry for both parties. I feel sorry for the young lady that got hurt and now needs medical help the rest of her life. And I feel sorry for the guy that did it because it broke his heart. But he also lost everything. And guys, general liability, would have helped him with that. Sad, sad situation. Partnership. We don't see much of this in the green industry. We don't. And if we do, it's typically, I'll give you an example that this would work. You have a landscape contractor and a general or a irrigation contractor. So you got a landscape contractor, irrigation contractor, and it's a huge business park development. The landscape contractor don't have the resources to do the irrigation. The irrigation contractor doesn't have the resources, to do the landscaping. They want to bid this job. They want to get it. They're friends, and they want to team up and do this job together. They'll form this partnership. So we'll have elite landscape contractors form a partnership with elite irrigators, right? And then they'll call it the elite team partnership. That would need to get the license in that partnership's name, which can be done. And then they bid the job and get it. And they're sharing these resources that they have together. But they also share those risks. Partnerships do. And then partners may disagree on how to run the business. So a lot of times people just form a partnership for a certain job. My dad had a partnership back in the days. He and his best friend in high school, teamed up and had a John Deere dealership, had a feed and seed store, kind of merged the landscape business into it and run it under a partnership, but then realized, hey, that it's hard feeding, two families from it. And so they dissolve the partnership, get rid of the dealership. They didn't have, they couldn't sell John Deere mowers and tractors anymore, and kind of went their separate ways. Remained friends, and unfortunately both of them are gone. My dad and his best friend, loved them to death. Still see my dad's partner's wife once in a blue moon, and their kids and grandkids. Super nice people. This, it was hard doing business and everybody being happy, so they dissolved it. So very few times do you see actually somebody doing that partnership. Another way that I could see that actually happen is little Bobby doesn't want to go to college, doesn't want to do anything but cut grass because he sees all these new landscapers out there with their big Ford trucks, King Ranches pulling lawnmower trailer. And so Bobby and his mom, Bobby's dad and mom says, hey, son, we got some money that we, put back in an account, for you to go to college. If you're not wanting to go to college, you want to start that mowing business, make me and your mom a partner. We'll be silence partners. And you can be, the one up front, and we'll give you the money to invest in that company for you. Mom and dad couldn't get in trouble. They're what they call a limited partner. Their son would be a general partner, the one actually out doing the work. So he could lose everything. His parents could only lose the financial contribution that they've made to that company. Now, corporation, we run everything as a C Corp. Once you form a corporation, you are a C Corp, and you have to file IRS form subchapter S. I can't remember the actual number on it, but it is a file for subchapter S, which is an S corporation, and will allow that corporate tax return pass through your individual Social Security and personal tax return. I like C Corp. I like keeping everything separate. I do. I have my personal reasons for that, but we are C Corp, or a corporation all the way. Owned by stockholders, which is me, myself, and I, right? And then stockholders do have limited risk, but I've got everything put into it, so I would lose what I've put into it. And then the stockholders may have little influence on business decisions. Now, that's if you wanted it to be that way. If you wanted to open up your business to stockholders to actually purchase stock, you can do that. It's one way to generate cash flow, or to get started, an investment start. But typically your stockholders in a green industry corporation is going to be the family members. Types of businesses, service business. It's what we are. It's what the green industry is. We're installing landscapes. We're installing irrigation systems, which we may merchandise some stuff there, but let's kind of back that up. Service business, mowing, pruning, pretty much labor stuff. Going to work on a heat and air conditioning unit, just tune-ups. Pool business, not actually selling the pools, but actually going and cleaning the pools. Taking a big wand and with the net on the end of it, cleaning it out. It's going to be your service type business. And I'm seeing a lot of people actually, going around, pooper scoopers, doing that for people. And it seems like they're making pretty good money doing it. Then you have a merchandising business. And then you have the manufacturing. And so we're going to look at them a little bit in detail. But before we do that, back to that service business, this can be a landscape maintenance contractor. This can be a landscape architect. They're drawing plans. They are providing a service, a design service for the client. And then anybody affiliated or associated with lawn care. Merchandising, a business that buys a product from another business to sell to customers. The irrigation contractor, the landscape contractor, the hardscaper. So we're buying from the nursery. We're buying from Site One. We're buying from local nurseries. We're buying from the concrete plant that also does concrete pavers and then concrete retaining walls, any type of hardscapes. We're buying it and then reselling it, or doing that design build project for a customer. We are a merchandising business, buying and reselling. Manufacturing business, a business that makes a product to sell. Your landscape nursery, your greenhouse, or your concrete company. You're actually growing stuff to sell. You're manufacturing it. Greenhouse, you're growing flowers to sell. You're growing vegetable plants to sell in people's edible landscapes. And then the concrete company, you're producing a service that's going to be used in a landscape job, whether it's for footers, whether it's for a concrete patio, whatever it's being used for. You're still manufacturing a product to be sold. Now, landscape contractor, office manager. These are some responsibilities that we would see of people. So you're a landscape contractor or irrigation contractor. You need this office manager. And I called the individual that I hired my operations manager. I need somebody to run the crews, keep track of it. But time and time again, I'd pull up to the job site and my office manager would be doing the work, and my employees standing around, hands in pocket, twiddling thumbs. And I'm like, well, what's going on here? And my OM would say, look, they didn't know how to do it, so I just jumped in and did it. Well, you can also teach them how to do it. So, out of the tree, out of the lift, out of the skid steer, and show these individuals what they need to be doing. But your office manager for a green industry company, record, sort, and file accounting information. They are gathering it. They are recording it, and they are filing it. So when you walk into your office and you're like, hey, I need the receipt for the Smith's retaining wall that we purchased from the local concrete company. I need that right now. They should be able to go right to it and find it for you. And it shouldn't be out in the truck, guys, in a clipboard. It needs to be in a particular way to file it, whether it's electronically or you're still, doing file cabinets. Often in one area, such as cash, payroll, accounts receivable, accounts payable, inventory, or purchases. So they're responsible for one of these areas. Now, some of you, they may be doing all of them. And there's nothing wrong with that. But as you grow, you may need to have somebody in accounts receivable and somebody in accounts payable. Involved with only a small portion of the total accounting responsibilities for the firm. Only that small part. Now, bookkeeper. Supervise the work of account managers. Assist with daily accounting work. And I told Jennifer this morning, I was like, we need to do this every single day because we got our invoicing done this morning. And this afternoon, I've been recording lectures. I'm like, invoicing needs to be done every single day, at least recorded. And using Jobber, I still got to tweak that a little bit. And Jennifer's working diligently on figuring that out. And she's doing an amazing job with Jobber. And if it was another accounting software, LMN, or if it's Aspire or whatever works for you, Jobber just works better for us. Assist with the daily accounting work, summarize accounting information, and then 1 to 2 years experience as an account manager is somebody that you're going to be looking for if you were going to hire this bookkeeper. So what about our accountants? They're going to help you design the accounting information system that you need. They're going to study your business and say, hey, we need to do this. Is it going to be accrual-based accounting? Is it going to be cash accounting? That's something you're going to have to determine with your CPA. And they're going to focus on analyzing and interpreting the information that they get from you and your business. They're going to look for important trends in the data. They're going to study the impact of alternate decisions, and then enter the field with an accounting degree. Yes, it's going to be a 4-year degree. They're either going to study managerial accounting, or they're going to study the public accounting, which is your CPA stuff, or they could be a CMA certified. It just left my mind. We're not thinking medical here, but a certified managerial accountant. And my cousin does that for a brick company. So, but again, you need these guys, whether or not they're on staff, but they need to at least be in your Rolodex of service people that are actually going to help you run your business. Your office manager, or this could be operations manager or whatever, but usually operations is going to be running the actual people in the field. Your office manager is going to be at that back end accounting office. They're going to be the ones in the back that nobody really sees. They're going to perform routine accounting activities such as maintenance of the general ledger, preparation of various accounting statements and financial reports, post journal entries, and verifies billings, invoices, and checks. Assist in completing moderately complex calculation, reconciles accounts and bank statements, has a basic understanding of bookkeeping and accounting principles, is proficient with spreadsheets and other software tools, and typically requires a high school diploma. But you'd want them probably to have a little bit more. Typically, it reports to a supervisor or manager or the boss, depending on the size of your company, and possesses a moderate understanding of general aspects of the job, works under the close direction of senior personnel in the functional area, and may require 0 to 1 years of general work experience. That is your office manager. Your bookkeeper maintains and records a complete and systematic set of business transactions, balances, ledgers, reconciles accounts, and prepares reports to show receipts, expenditures, accounts receivable and payable, follows bookkeeping procedures established by the organization, may require an associate's degree or equivalent, typically reports to a supervisor or manager, and gaining or has attained full proficiency in a specific area of discipline. Works under moderate supervision, typically requires 1 to 3 years of related experience. So that is your bookkeeper. And in conclusion with this course, we did describe the purpose of accounting. We described the accounting process. We defined GAAP and described the process used by the FASB to develop principles. And then we defined the 3 types of business ownership structures, classified different types of businesses by activities, meaning whether they're service, merchandising, or manufacturing, and then identified career opportunities in accounting within the green industry. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching this lecture. I hope it's been informational and beneficial to you, and I will see you in the next lecture.